Did you know something as simple as breathing? Yes, breathing can actually shift your nervous system, not mindset, not motivation, not just thinking positive, your actual nervous system. And for law enforcement officers who live in fight or flight mode, that shift is critical because if they never come out of survival mode, they can't fully process what they've experienced. So if your loved one isn't interested in counseling yet, if they shut down when you just suggest therapy, or if you're just looking for some practical way that doesn't feel intimidating, well, this episode is definitely for you. Hi, my name is Amy. I'm a mother of two and a spouse of a law enforcement officer who has served for over 30 years. Code 44 is designed to help spouses and loved ones recognize, respond, and support the mental health of our law enforcement officers. Today, I'm so excited to bring to you Christina Karkouta is a breathwork coach and the founder of BreathLab, where she teaches functional breathing and nervous system regulation. She works with individuals navigating high stress, including first responders and their family. She helps them shift out of the chronic hypervigilance by correcting dysfunctional breathing patterns at the root so that the nervous system can shift out of constant alert. To say that I'm super interested and intrigued by this topic is an understatement. So welcome, Christina, to Code 44 podcast.
Thank you, Amy. It's really such an honor to be here. I love what you are doing, speaking to law enforcement spouses and families to really help with mental health and awareness.
Important topic, and we can't spread enough about it. So thank you for helping me in this journey. Before we dive in, can you tell us just a little bit about your journey that led you to BreathLab?
Yeah, it actually started because I saw something wasn't working in the wellness realm. We're in a mental health crisis, yet we never had more access to resources. And still, people feel incredibly anxious, reactive, and burnt out. Breathing has always been a part of my work for the past 15 years because I'm also a licensed speech language pathologist. Breath affects voice quality and speech rate. And I've always known it was such a foundational tool. I grew up around first responders and those who served in our military. My dad, he's a Vietnam veteran. My uncle responded to 9/11 as a firefighter, and I actually live in a law enforcement firefighter community. So I've just seen both sides of the job, the heroic side and the shadow side behind closed doors. But this also became very personal for me too, because I was on anxiety medication for years. I was very self-aware. I understood my patterns and I was even in talk therapy, but I was still anxious, still irritable and not sleeping well and taking off the edge in ways that I wasn't proud of. I've always been into physical fitness, and around 2018, I took my very first breathing class. I had no idea what it was. And there really wasn't much talk around breath work or what it does. It was more of a yogi type of class, very spiritual and very woo-woo.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
despite that, after taking this class, I felt something shift really immediately, mentally and physically. And for the first time, my mind actually stopped scanning. It was such a pivotal moment in my own journey. And I realized that this thing we never think about is what keeps us alive. And it's deeply tied to our physical health, our thoughts, and our patterns. And what helps us feel calm after we go through something traumatic or stressful. So I started researching. I read Breathe by Dr. Belisa, who's a clinical psychologist, and she specializes in functional breathing patterns. She reframed breathing for me. She explained that when we're in high stress situations, we change our breathing patterns. And most of us actually don't know how to recover from that. So I just started to work on fixing my own breathing patterns to see if it actually helped me stay calm and regulated in everyday life. And it
Yeah.
actually did. And that was the moment I realized breath work isn't woo woo. It's actually very science based and it's physiological. And it's with us every single day, and we don't even pay attention to it. So that's really what led me to create BreathLab, which focuses on retraining functional breathing mechanics, which simply means teaching people how to breathe the way that their body was designed to breathe, not just to survive, but to actually use it as a tool to regulate, recover, and function well. I found this to be a vital tool for first responders. I didn't
Mhm.
expect to start working with them. I just noticed that was
Mhm.
most of my client base when I started becoming a breathing coach. And
Yeah.
these individuals, they know something feels off within their body or even in their minds, but they don't always have the space to talk about it and they really don't know how. So
Yeah.
that's where Breath Lab really became Breath Lab.
It's so crazy. Something that we do every single day, such as breathing. And I think I heard you say sometimes we just don't know how to breathe right. It sounds so crazy, right? Which is probably why it got classified as woo woo at one time. We're going to dive into the science behind that. But I want you to share a little bit more about what personally drew you to working with first responders.
First responders tend to get overlooked. And culturally, there isn't a space to talk about struggling and what's happening on the
Mhm.
job and how it impacts home life. First responders,
Mhm.
they're in our communities every day. They
Mhm.
respond at 2 a.m. They protect our
Mhm.
neighborhoods. They make
Mhm.
sure that our kids are safe. I really care about that deeply because they are so dependable, loyal, and selfless. And like I said, we see them every single day. They are well known and
Mhm.
presented within the community. Having grown up in a firefighter and law enforcement family, I've seen the part that no one talks about. Alcohol
Mhm.
becoming the off switch, there's irritability, emotional distance, poor sleep, and even communication breakdowns. So
Mhm.
I really see the struggle of trying to be the hero at work, but fine at home. It's really not about their character and who they are at the core. It's
Mhm.
about a nervous system that never gets a chance to return to baseline, especially in
Mhm.
law enforcement. There can be real fear around speaking up about mental health. And when there's even a
Yeah.
perception that saying something could affect your badge and your ability to carry, I mean, I believe you mentioned that on episode 2 of this podcast series, right? It
Mhm.
becomes safer
Mhm.
to just shove it down. So then
Yeah.
hypervigilance continues, even when the
Yeah.
environment is safe.
What you just said is so true. When you were speaking, I was getting goosebumps because I wanted to yell, yes, you get it. Exactly. But our law enforcement officers are trained to go towards the danger. And as spouses, I think sometimes we put ourselves in this little bubble and go, yeah, they go to work and then they come home and they write a lot of speeding tickets and they help people out. But sometimes it's hard to stop and think. They are in fight and flight mode all the time. And you talk about that hypervigilance, right?
Mhm.
I don't think when people think of law enforcement, do they ever really think about the things that they see, that they experience, that they have to be involved in on a daily basis because that's what they are trained to do. Can you talk a little bit more about what happens when a law enforcement officer's nervous system never really gets a chance to come back to that safe, even when maybe they're going home and everything looks really, really calm at home?
When you think of our law enforcement officers, to do the job, they live on duty mode, right? Hypervigilance is not optional. It's actually required because they are
Mhm.
trained to scan, assess aspects, read behaviors, anticipate threats. And the brain's job from a nervous system standpoint is survival. And as
Mhm.
intelligent as our brains are, categorizes or compartmentalizes everything into threat or a not threat. So when
Mhm.
a threat is perceived, The sympathetic nervous system, that's our alarm system. That's going to tell us, hey, the bear's going to come eat us right now. We
Mm-hmm.
better fight it
Right.
or run away from it, right?
Right.
That system is going to activate. So that means your heart rate's going to rise, the adrenaline's going to increase, your vision narrows into tunnel vision, and your reaction time speeds up. And that keeps officers and first responders alive because they have to move towards the target or the danger
Mm-hmm.
to keep themselves alive and to keep other alive, for
Mm-hmm.
extreme critical incidences. And they don't
Right.
know what exactly they're walking up to. So they
Yeah.
have to be on high alert. And it doesn't just live on the mind, it actually lives in the body. So when we
Mm-hmm.
think of it from a physical standpoint, when we are in that fight or flight mode, our abdomen tightens, the ribs stop moving fully. It's called bracing. And the shoulders, breathing begins to speed up and shoulders start to lift. It becomes a muscular corset. And when the body braces, breathing shifts automatically. And that's going to create the breath to become quicker, higher in the chest, and very upper body driven. And that breathing pattern feeds right back into the brain. Stay ready. And over time, with chronic exposure to that, it becomes the default. And ultimately, when we experience a stressful event, we breathe in a way that's going to be more expanded and, take a belly breath, a more natural
Mm-hmm.
way of breathing that doesn't signal danger because we're not breathing as fast. So what happens
Mm-hmm.
is with law enforcement officers, their parasympathetic nervous system, their recovery system is supposed to bring the heart rate down, and that's going to support the sleep, the digestion, the emotional regulation, the recovery. So really the issue isn't danger. It's about the lack of recovery from what the job requires them to do
Mm-hmm.
to survive.
When you were talking about when we go into that stress mode, our shoulders raise, right? I feel like I have chronic neck issues all the time because I'm always like crunching up. And I started thinking about those things that you were describing. And with our law enforcement officers, you can see things when they're coming home. We don't see them in the moment, right? Of when they're going towards that danger. But when they're coming home, we're starting to see maybe a little bit more, not the shoulders raised, but maybe a little bit more of the irritability or maybe a little bit of the sleeping issues. You hear that law enforcement don't sleep much, right? Emotional withdrawing from social environments or maybe their spouses or family member. I had someone describe it as numbing out, right? Just constantly scrolling. All of those things, would you say that those are definitely symptoms saying that the nervous system is kind of stuck a little bit?
They're seeking for ways to just self-regulate and self-soothe, and it's really so
Mhm.
unconscious. So
Yeah.
a lot of law enforcement officers, they don't realize that their habits, their patterns, they're not saying
Mhm.
I have hypervigilance. They're not saying I experienced this trauma and I don't know how to process it. Like they're not going to talk about it. They'll just say
Yeah.
snapping at my wife, I have issues at home, I'm exhausted, I can't sleep, I just want to drink and go to the bar and hang out with my buddies, right?
Yeah.
It's because they are just looking to self-soothe. And at the time, that quick snap, that extra beer, it brings emotional safety and it gives them a tool to just self-soothe and self-regulate in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's why they're
Yeah.
going for it. It's quick and it
Yeah.
helps them relax.
Yeah. Yeah. You said they're not going to admit that they're hyper vigilant, right? They're never going to say that. And that's where that fantastic terminology of I'm fine. That's where that all comes from, right? They just feel like they are fine. So we hear a lot, just take a breath, just breathe. But what does that actually mean? And how does that work when someone is under chronic stress?
Believe it or not, there's a statistic 90% of people with anxiety or PTSD, complex PTSD, have a breathing issue. They're already over breathing. So when someone says, take a deep breath, it's like, how?
You're right. I'm breathing.
Right? They're like, I'm already breathing. And then all of a sudden, you'll see someone take this ginormous breath in. And then it's
Yeah.
like they pull in their belly, the shoulders come all the way up. It's visibly an upper chest breath, right? And then they just exhale it out. And believe it or not, that's stress breathing. Stress breathing is faster, it's higher in the chest. And also, if you are exposed to chronic stress or have really bad sleep patterns, there's mouth breathing involved. So when someone says, take a deep breath, most people just breathe bigger, not
Yeah.
actually slower and lower, right? We want to think of the expansion of the lower two ribs, the diaphragm, that's our main breathing muscle. And we want to make sure that it expands towards the front, towards the sides, and the back. Our shoulders are never supposed to be moving when we are breathing. So it's really not about just take a deep breath, because people are going to associate that with, oh, I need to take more air in. It's
Yep.
actually taking a calm breath. And that means that it's slower, it's through the nose, and it's low into our ribs and our diaphragm. And you just feel this beautiful expansion. I'm sure you've heard the term belly breather, but it's like, what does that even mean? We don't even have lungs or belly.
Right. Exactly.
So this is where I actually come in. I'm looking at, the way that your breathing muscles are moving, and I'm looking at your diaphragm and your intercostal muscles, which are the squishy muscles between each rib. And I'm looking for the expansion and narrowing of your rib cage when you are taking that deep breath.
What you're saying is that there's a right way to breathe and a wrong way to breathe, right? That's essentially what we're saying. And I'm
Yes.
pretty certain that for my whole life, I have been breathing incorrectly. So I'm really excited to get into, okay, how does this actually work? But first, before we go there, I know people probably have gotten to this point of the episode and went, this is weird stuff, right? I think you referred to it as woo woo at the beginning, or I want to address that out of the gate here because there's people that are going, there is no way breathing is going to change how I feel as a first responder when I'm in high stress situation. I'm sure you probably hear that a lot, right?
Yeah. And I do want to point this out because believe it or not, when law enforcement officers they come to me, they go, "Oh wait, we did box breathing in our training." One guy, like in special ops, he said to me one of the tools and strategies that they use, like if they're responding, let's say they're going up the stairs, right, and their vision is blocked, they'll just like tap on each other's butts to signal for them to start nasal breathing. Like that's what they tell them like in the training, but they don't know why they do it.
Interesting. When they're going through the academy and they're learning to shoot, they are definitely taught how to regulate their breathing.
Most long so
Mhm.
breathing, it's used as a tool to help them
Mhm.
shoot at a target and help them
Yeah,
focus as well.
yeah, yeah.
It's also something that we do literally every single day, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when we think about breath work, many
Mhm,
individuals associate that with yoga and the
mhm,
spiritual side. But
mhm,
if we can get
mhm.
past that stigma that breathing is not woo, it's
Yeah.
rewiring, and it's necessary for our overall health because it
Mhm,
does impact our sleep, our digestion, how the body detoxifies, even our
mhm.
mental clarity. Think about it. All this oxygen that we breathe in, if we're breathing in a very shallow way, it's not going to our brain fully. So we are
Right.
depriving our brain of the nutrients that it needs to be cognizant and to remember things and be able to
Yeah,
show up in society, right?
yeah.
Your brain, your lungs, and your nervous system are constantly communicating. If breathing is fast and shallow, the brain turns the alarm system on. If breathing is slower and nasal, the brain turns the recovery system on. From a physiological standpoint, we spoke about the diaphragm, and it's shaped like a frisbee, and it cuts our body in half, and it sits under our heart. When it moves fully, that means it expands to the front, towards the sides, and to the back. When we exhale, the diaphragm's going to come up, apply gentle pressure to our heart, and it's going to lower our heart rate, and it's going to activate that parasympathetic rest and digest system. And think about it, when someone is over breathing, and all of our first responders have seen civilians have panic attacks.
Yeah.
The way how they identify a panic attack is over and loud breathing. That's going to mimic panic. It's going to tell the brain, we're in fight or flight right now. We got to go. And it's about taking more breaths. So when we consciously begin to slow our breathing down and make sure that the muscles, our breathing muscles, are working properly, it's going to help us be able to calm the nervous system down. We're human, and we experience stress, we experience anxiety, we experience traumatic events, we experience grief and loss and all these things. That's going to impact the way that we naturally breathe. It only becomes an issue when we actually don't know how to functionally breathe in a way that reminds our body that there is no threat. There is no bear coming to eat us, so that we can recover. And I cannot stress that enough. The way that you breathe helps your body recover from really stressful things. And it's only becomes detrimental when we get stuck in that pattern of
Absolutely.
overbreathing.
I think you said something at the beginning, which was 90% of people with anxiety have a dysfunctional breathing pattern. That's a really high statistic that says maybe I'm not the only one not breathing properly, right? Especially when they're in that trauma all the time.
When we develop conscious awareness of what's supposed to be moving when we're breathing, again, not supposed to be high up in the shoulders, it's low body expansion, that
Yeah.
awareness is going to go so far, because when you actually learn, okay, how do I get these muscles to move? You'll be sitting in your car at a red light and be like, am I holding my breath right now?
Yeah.
And it just, and that awareness itself is going to help people eventually breathe the way that their bodies were meant to breathe. There's another statistic that research shows that by the age of 5.5 years of life, breathing patterns begin to change. And I've actually seen that with my speech and language therapy students who are stutterers. You tell them to take a deep breath, and all of a sudden they're taking this
Yeah.
massive chest breath. And
Yeah.
that's how embedded a breathing is into our responses to daily stress. Eventually, the body's just going to succumb to an overloaded and overstimulated nervous system. And then that's going to be the natural way of breathing. So when you
Yeah.
change the breathing pattern, you interrupt the stress loop and those signals, because now you're shifting, you're down regulating yourself. You are completely rewiring the way in which you respond to stress. You develop more stress resiliency as well, because you're not functioning at this max capacity anymore. You're sending signals that, okay, I can actually come back down. And this actually is not a threat when I am home in my sanctuary and I am present with my kids, right? You're able to retrain your brain to be more present, to recognize that not everything is a threat. And that really also speaks to the neuroplasticity of our brain. So how our brain will create reactions and patterns from the lived experiences, right? And just like wiring, like a network, right? So basically what you're doing, you are sending all this fresh oxygen, this healthy oxygen to your brain to support neuroplasticity and new neural connections. Mhm.
You talked a little bit about stopping the big deep breaths, right? You're talking about
Right.
breathing more from your diaphragm. Can you walk us through a breathing session today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first thing that I want you to do is place one hand on your chest, the other on your
Okay.
belly.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me which one is moving first, which one's moving second. And it's totally fine if nothing moves. So, go ahead, take
That
a,
means I'm
a
not
breath
breathing,
in.
right?
So,
Okay.
we're going to take a breath in like you're at the doctor's office. Good. And exhale. Or did you exhale? Oh.
Uh, I did through my mouth.
Okay.
Mm,
And which hand was moving first when you did that?
Definitely in my chest.
Right? So that's going to tell me that you're a chest breather, right? You're
Mhm,
using the upper portion of your chest to breathe, but
mhm,
ultimately we
mhm.
want to breathe into the bottom two ribs. So go ahead and place your
Oh,
hands on your bottom two ribs.
okay.
Good.
Got it.
And I want you to breathe in and out through your nose. While you are breathing, feel your rib cage, your belly's going to move away from your spine as you inhale. Shoulders stay dropped. As you exhale, apply gentle pressure to your rib cage, and your belly's going to come in towards your spine. Good. Inhale, drop your shoulders, stick your belly out, spread your side ribs, and exhale through your nose. Push your rib cage together, rib cage narrows. Good. Inhale, drop your shoulders, expand your belly. Good. Shoulders drop. And exhale, push your rib cage together. Good. And now continue this for this count. In, two, out, three, two. Good. A gentle breath in and a slow and relaxed breath out. Good. In, two, out, three, two. Good. Now, place one hand on your chest, the other on your belly. Take that deep breath right now and exhale. What do you notice?
Totally different. Totally different. That's crazy.
Yeah. That's how easy it is to change your breathing
Mm,
pattern. That's how we get from chest breathing to more diaphragmatic breathing that signals to your body and your brain that there is no reason to be hypervigilant right now. We can shift that in a
mm.
moment. How do you feel after taking
I
those
feel
breaths?
so much more relaxed. Yeah. It's crazy because what I noticed originally is one, I breathe out of my mouth, I breathe in my chest, and my shoulders are already always up, right? And so that little bit of a exercise just shifted everything down to the diaphragm. It's crazy.
So now you have this natural imprint, right? Of, oh,
Mhm,
okay, this is actually what it's like to take a deep breath. So when you go into your car,
mhm.
just taking a few moments at a red light to
Yeah.
focus on that rib cage expansion, slow and controlled, keeping the shoulders dropped, and just
Yeah.
letting the breath naturally release from the nose. That is going
Mhm,
to create such a quick downshift. Think of the
mhm,
pause when someone cuts you off in traffic and you want to scream at them and curse at them,
yeah,
right? Instead of lashing out, you control your reaction. And that's also what
yeah.
breath tells us, trains us to do.
It's so naturally when you get in a high stress just to, puff up your chest, right? And your shoulders. A lot of us have experienced a panic attack or the beginnings of a panic attack. Never did I stop to think that, hey, maybe that breathing is affecting my brain as well. And so it's very interesting how the mind is wired and how something that sounds so simple as breathing can really stop you and retrain you. I have often found myself, whether I'm at a stop sign or a red light, or maybe just doing dishes, I'm holding my breath for no reason. But I'm just like, why am I holding my breath? Why do we tend to hold our breath?
It's just a trained pattern with the rise in social media and the constant influx of information and just anxiety, go, 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 respond, respond,
Yeah.
respond. And that's
Yeah.
what our law enforcement officers need to do. We become so disconnected from our body and what's really going on. And the body is so sensitive. It's going to pick up on all the information that it's being overloaded with, and then you just develop this natural physiological pattern of, okay,
Hmm.
I'm overstimulated right now. I'm overwhelmed right now, but my mind's not
Hmm.
processing that right now. But I know
Right.
that if I keep continuing this way with this overstimulation, I need to do something quick and fast. So
Yeah.
when you actually hold your breath and you're using your shoulders, you're just
Yeah.
sending the brain, hey, I need more cortisol and adrenaline to keep going. And then this is where
Yeah.
chronic stress starts to happen. We just start
Yeah.
pumping out all these stress hormones and we don't even realize it.
Yeah. I know you're describing me right now when you're saying all that, right?
Like I always tell my first responders this, like what you've lived and what you've experienced, like even before you got on the job, it's really not your fault. I mean, most
Hmm.
uh chronic stress patterns, happen in childhood. And
Hmm.
it's about how you've learned to cope and survive, but it is your job to have awareness
Hmm.
around your habits and your patterns and be able to correct it. And however way that looks
Hmm.
for you,
Hmm.
it truly does start with your breath because your body doesn't believe that it's safe.
So, for spouses listening right now, everything we've talked about makes so much sense, but it doesn't help much if people don't know how to use it for real life. So, let's make this maybe a little practical.
Yeah. So, like I said, everything just really comes back down to personal awareness. So, one, I would figure out what kind of breather that you are, because there's no point in doing any
Hmm.
kind of breathing technique if you're not aware if you're a chest breather or if you're a belly breather. And one way
Yeah.
to do that is, again, place a hand on the chest, chase a hand on
Hmm.
the belly, take that big breath in and see which hand is moving first. If the top one moves
Yeah.
first, well, you're primarily a chest breather. If the lower hand moves first, well, you're primarily a belly breather. So ultimately, you identify what type of breather that you are,
Yeah.
and then you develop the conscious awareness. Okay, well, I need to actually practice this and
Mm.
make it very practical. So
Yeah.
can listen to a song and focus on inhaling and exhaling to the beat of that song. You
Mm.
could consciously check in with your body before bed. You just take a few breaths in right before
Hmm.
you go to sleep, but you put all your focus and your attention on moving the belly away from the
Hmm.
spine. This is a practice and it does take conscious awareness to sit down
Yeah.
and to be able to sit and just focus on the air coming in through the nose and the air coming out through your nose. Of
One of the things that
course.
I noticed on your website is that you have a clear and simple method that you teach, which is align, reset, and transform, which is really basically what you were talking through. But I love how you have that structure. Do you want to talk a little bit about
Mhm.
that?
Right. So for a line, again, it's noticing the pattern. Okay. Do I
Hmm.
have a dysfunctional breathing pattern? Chest breathing,
Hmm.
mouth breathing, over breathing, right? Okay. You
Hmm.
have that awareness. And then the reset is the exercises that actually
Mhm.
change your overall breathing mechanics, which is a fancy way of saying your breathing patterns, right? Are you
Mhm.
actually using your diaphragm? Are you using your intercostal
Mm.
to expand and narrow your rib cage so that you can take a more efficient breath, right? So then you do
Right.
exercises that are actually going to change the pattern of how you breathe, right? And then you transform. So again, repetition, conscious awareness,
Mhm.
conscious practice is going to
Mhm.
make it so automatic that your body is going to breathe the way that it's naturally meant to breathe. It's
Mhm.
like working out your biceps. You also have to work out your diaphragm to make it more mobile and
Mhm.
stronger.
I hear you saying is that practice then it just becomes natural. It just becomes your cognitive behavior to breathe in the proper manner, which is where I think you're probably seeing a lot of the success with first responders is if they just start to naturally breathe that way.
With first responders, they like tangible tools, right? With actual
Mhm.
outcomes.
Yeah.
So it's really through giving this practice a shot and seeing the immediate shifts that it has to
Yeah.
offer the moment that you start correcting your everyday breathing patterns.
Yeah.
And just taking, a minute or a few minutes to breathe low with the diaphragm to slow your
Yeah.
breath down in and out through your nose. So it's low
Mhm.
and slow through the
Mhm.
nose. And that's going to create a more calming effect as opposed to
Mhm.
mouth breathing, over breathing, because then you're
Yeah.
just signaling to your body, I'm in stress right now. I need to take more breaths to survive. I need to activate my hypervigilant fight or flight
Yeah.
response right now. Breathing and practicing breath work is a form of more mindfulness, creating more presence and
Mhm.
awareness in a more positive way. It's breath work is truly for people who don't know how to meditate because it gives them a focus on,
Mhm.
again, what muscles are moving, what muscles are not.
And what you just said, low breathing, slow breathing. I think that's an easy takeaway, right? And an easy shift that if we're at home wondering, are we breathing correctly? That's a good analysis right there of, where's my breathing coming from? Before we wrap up, I know that some people listening are thinking, okay, this all makes sense, but what if I want to go deeper? If they want to expose their spouse or their family member to it?
I offer a free breathwork video series. It's a week long and it's going to
Mhm.
guide you from noticing the type of breather that you are so that you could take an actual correct diaphragmatic breath. So
Mhm.
if they're curious, they could start there. I
Okay.
offer one-to-one sessions where I will be giving you a breathing analysis
Mm.
because it's important that we have data and be able to identify how
Yeah.
well our lung capacity is and if our muscles are moving appropriately so that you can
Yeah.
actually track the way that you are breathing. And then I'll give you a few exercises to correct your breathing form and along with some audio so that you can follow along. And I also offer a subscription based membership. It's called the Inner Circle, where you can pop on weekly for live breathwork classes. And there's also a video and audio library that will help you practice breathwork
Mhm.
and breathing techniques and as well as correct your patterns.
Great. A lot of offering that's, free, give it a try. Now you are located in New York, but you don't have to fly to New York for these services, right?
No, so I do offer in person and online. In fact, the majority of my first responders are from all over the nation.
I mean, for those who want to fly to New York, I'm sure Christina would love to see you in person. But to even just get started or to explore it a little bit more, one of the things that I hear is that our law enforcement sometimes are closed down to some of the other tools that are available. Christina talks about yoga and, a couple other things that are out there that maybe your first responder just says, nope, they're not open to it, or even sometimes counseling. and EMDR. But to me, changing how you're breathing sounds kind of like a no-brainer to me. You're already breathing every day. And if there are things that we can do to shift the nervous system, then, hopefully this is one that your loved one will be open to exploring. So anyone can start the process with Christina. I will link all of her information, her contact information, her website in the episode notes. So if you want to grab it there, it will be readily available. Thank you so much, Christina. I learned personally so much for myself and how this can help my loved one that is a first responder. Before we go, are there any other things that you would like to share with the group or any other last comments?
Well, everything that we do is lived by and guided by the breath. When it stops, we ultimately stop. And
Yeah.
that's how powerful and transformational this built-in tool that we have is. So I hope that you start to think about the way that you are breathing and start to make the connections about how it is that you function in everyday life and how deeply intertwined it is. And I hope you utilize it as a free tool
Yes.
for when you don't feel like talking about things.
It was so powerful and so educational. And so I thank you so much for being part of our show today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Code 44 Podcast. I hope that you're walking away with at least one simple tool, something practical that you and your loved one can actually use. Sometimes it's not about doing everything. It's about starting somewhere. Let us take a moment to pray. Heavenly Father, we lift up our first responders and every spouse listening today. You see what they carry, the calls they don't talk about, and the stress that lingers, and the weight that follows them home. Lord, calm their nervous systems, slow their breathing, bring peace where there's tension and clarity where there's overwhelm. Give them courage to take one small step towards healing. Remind them that they are not alone. In Jesus' name, amen. If this episode encouraged you, helped you, or even gave you language that you didn't have before, I'd love for you to stay connected. Join our Code 44 community on Facebook and YouTube. Be sure to hit subscribe on your YouTube channel so you don't miss our next episode. You're not alone in this, and you don't have to figure it out by yourself.